What is up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with our first off-season college football vid. As always, I'm Sam, joined by Michael. Thank you so much for coming on today. We've got a great video for you. We're going to recap the college football playoffs, see how we looked on our predictions and analysis, go over some big transfer portal updates, obviously talk about some coaching changes, and wrap it up with some way too early 2025 talk. Michael,
2024.
thank you for coming on. As always, uh, we would be remiss if we did not start with the big news of the college football world right now. Nick Saban, after so many years of dominance, is stepping down as the Alabama head coach. He's retiring. Took the entire world by storm. I thought I was in a dream when I saw that notification come up, or a prank. When our friend Ryan sent it to our group chat, I thought I was getting pranked again. Crazy that he finally decided to step away. And then Washington goes and hires Kalen Deboer from Washington after a national championship runner-up run. Michael, what are your thoughts not only on Saban retiring, but Deboer getting hired as the replacement head coach for Washington? Did they make the right move here with this hire?
Yeah, so I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts. I kind of had a very similar reaction to you. Saban retiring is, something that people have been speculating about for years, and it's like, when is the dynasty going to end? And we've kind of seen it come to a little bit of a standstill in recent years, but no one was expecting this.
Yeah.
He's the undisputed, unanimous college football coaching GOAT. And it really is sad to see, because as much as I hate Alabama and the torture that they've kind of caused my team, my Florida Gators, the last few years, I have nothing but respect for Coach Saban, what he's done, and his whole approach to coaching. The amount of discipline and effort and energy he puts into it is something that is almost unparalleled. And a big reason he said that he actually ended up retiring is because his health and his age started to get in the way of that, especially in the new age of NIL and recruiting, where you have to be on the stick. I mean, these guys are working crazy hours.
Pretty much year round. I mean, you really only get July off, realistically.
Yeah, and when you are 72 years old, you really have to start asking yourself, is this still for me? It's going to be really sad to see him go. It's like a low-key, a very big part of my childhood, especially as the SEC. It's all we know when we think about SEC football, Nick Saban is one of the premier guys you think of, if not the guy. But yeah, really sad to see him go. I think he did it for the right reasons. I think he's done a lot of great things for the sport. It'll be really interesting to see what it's like without him. I personally, unfortunately, think that Georgia is going to have a much easier way dominating. I think Alabama was one of the few teams, especially in the SEC, that can kind of go stride for stride with them. We'll see if Kalen Deboer can do it. And speaking of Kalen Deboer, I think it's an interesting hire. I think the best way I've heard someone put it was Kalen Deboer just knows how to do more with less. He's never had rosters historically that are more talented than a lot of the teams that he's beating on the biggest stages. I mean, you talk about an Oregon team that probably most people at the beginning of the year thought would run away with the Pac-12. I mean, maybe not run away, but was by far
handle it, right? Like
the most talented on both sides of the ball, and they found ways to win. Making it to the national championship was no easy feat, especially against a team that most people would say had the talent advantage in Texas. So I don't know what he's been able to do with the Washington program is unbelievable in the couple of years he's been there. Do I have questions about do I have questions about his ability to recruit and acquire talent? Sure. I think a couple of the guys that were there already, such as Roma Dunze and Jalen McMillan, I think he'll be able to get it done at a school like Alabama. It'd be hard not to, just because of all the resources that they have. But do I think it's going to be harder and it'd be a big adjustment? Yes. Because on the other flip of the coin, a 10-2 season at Washington gets you promoted. Yeah, fans love you, but a 10-2 season at Alabama gets you fired eventually if you don't improve.
No, I still look at that like a down year.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting hire. I think what also is very clear is that Alabama, this wasn't their first guy. I think they reached out to Lanning, Norvell. They probably would have taken Kiffin over DeBoer as well. And it makes sense why each of those coaches said no. I mean, you look at what they've each independently set up in their respective conferences, and it's nothing that they can easily leave, and especially trying to fill in the shoe of Nick Saban, the greatest to ever do it. It might
have been a turnoff for the job, honestly. The fact that you have to come and follow up like we just said, the GOAT of college football coaching.
Yeah, yeah, which is completely understandable. But yeah, I think it's an interesting hire. I think me personally, if I'm an Alabama fan, I'm okay with the hire. I'm not super enthusiastic, but from an outsider's perspective, I will say like I would not be surprised if it took a couple of years for them to get back to being a more dominant program, which
Mhm.
I believe they will. Just because if this isn't the right guy, they'll find someone, and they have enough resources to be recruiting at a really high level, hitting the portal at a high level, and you know all that talent acquisition is it's gonna get you places on the field. So I don't know. I think it's an okay hire. I wouldn't be. I'd probably give it like a B plus rating if I
Right.
could.
Yeah, that feels fair.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I see it. But man, it's gonna be sad not being able to see Saban on the sideline. My TikTok is kind of full with some cool Saban edits that I've been saving. But
Yeah.
yeah, he'll be missed. But yeah, interesting hire to say the least.
I agree. I kind of feel like that puts it in a good spot, right? B plus. For me, I'd go A minus because what else did you have available to you realistically? Like who else was gonna come? Like you said, Lanning and Norvell. From what I was reading yesterday, it seems like they were in serious talks with both of those candidates. Seems like they really wanted Lanning. He shut him down quick. It felt like Norvell was the second guy that they reached out to that had a realistic chance of coming. He shut it down, and then FSU signed him to a new 8-year deal right after he committed to stay. So after those two guys are gone, realistically, what left? What are you left to work with, right? Harbaugh's going. Sark is probably not leaving Texas. Kiffin, that was my option. That's who I said I thought would be the best. But when those guys commit to their schools, that they've set up programs, they've set up their roots there. Who else are you left with? Deboer really hadn't had major roots at Washington. With all of Washington's players going, it's not like he was tied emotionally to anyone there. So I just feel like it was the best available hire. And like you said, if a couple years from now this isn't working, they'll get their guy.
Yeah, and for a little bit there, Vegas really had Mike Norvell at the
I was
most.
worried. I'm not gonna lie. For all the issues I have with Mike Norvell, I was scared that they were gonna take him, and I'm happy he
Yeah, I
hasn't
had I
resigned.
had mixed feelings about him leaving. I wouldn't. I don't know if that would be necessarily the best hire, but
Hmm.
yeah, scary if you're an FSU fan. And then I really thought Kiffin had a great shot
Me
of going
too.
to
Yeah,
Bama just because
100%.
he had roots there previously. But if you really think about it, um, I think now Ole Miss has a case to be the front runner for the SEC West. Well, if there was an SEC West still,
Right
but
now there's no more
um,
divisions, but just to appear in the championship game, I think they have to have probably the second best odds.
yeah, I mean, because we'll get to it in a little bit, but what they've
Hmm.
done in the portal, what Kiffin's done all off season, or even in like the last few weeks, couple months, it's been pretty great in terms of acquiring talent. So yeah, and then what also was interesting, and I think you kind of wanted to talk about this, Sam, was
Yeah,
the 30-day portal window that's now open for both Bama and Washington.
we've already
Um,
seen moves from players on both teams.
Yeah, as a Gator fan, I'm excited because a lot of guys that we should have had and could have had ended up going to Bama, so we might be able to pull a couple through there. But yeah,
There's a
what are your
lot of
thoughts
interesting
on?
prospects. Milrose said he's staying, but there's some others to look at.
Yeah,
Ryan Williams is a 5-star plus guy on three who reclassed from 2025. And because of that, he could not sign during the early signing period. This ends up benefiting him because now he, waited out until Saban retired and he's already publicly decommitted. The second the news came out, he decommitted. Auburn is the clear front runner to land him. That's where he's taking an official visit to soon. That's scary hours in Auburn. If they really had a quarterback, that's 3 5-star receivers incoming. So
yeah,
they're set up nice. But yeah, is there any players that you've got your eye on in this 30-day window now between Washington and Alabama?
yeah. Another great receiver that Bama is probably going to be losing is Isaiah Bond.
Yeah, he already hit the portal.
I think I really because I think correct me if I'm wrong, in his commitment, like the year prior, it was down to Bama and Florida primarily,
And then
and he
you're
ended up
right.
choosing. Yeah, he ended up choosing Alabama. So I was really hoping we'd push hard for him. But right now it's looking like Texas is the front runner. He's taking an official visit there right now. I think today or tomorrow. Um, I think, yeah, he was obviously great this past year. Not many players are able to do that as a
Yeah,
freshman at
yeah.
Alabama. So a lot of potential there. And then also on the defense, it'd be really interesting to see where Caleb Downs ends up.
I'm
If he,
so I 100% agree with you. Very
yeah,
invested in.
I think there's a good chance Bama poaches, or sorry, Georgia poaches him. He tweeted out, I think it was earlier today,
Ohio
something
State
about
too has been linked to him.
Yeah. He tweeted something out about like the dogs or something, but I don't know. I think it was like a dog emoji with like the two eyes. So
Yeah,
I don't know what that really means, but wherever he goes, he'll be for sure an impact player, instant impact player. And then you also got guys, a lot of DBs for either committed to Bama or they're not a lot of guys are talking about like Jameer Grimsley.
Des
You
Ricks,
have
he just hit the portal this morning.
yeah, Des Ricks, which probably is going to also end up at Georgia because
Mhm.
that's where didn't his brother play there? Or
Yeah, no, I thought his brother played in Alabama.
oh yeah. I'm thinking of someone else. But yeah. Des Ricks hits the portal. Jameer Grimsley, who's a guy they just got committed. Xavier Mincy. Those two guys I'm on high alert to potentially go to Florida. I know from their last class, Tony Mitchell was a guy that Florida was interested in. Didn't see the field much this past year, but he was another 5-star guy. So if I'm Kalen Deboer, in addition to bringing in the OC and wide receivers coach from Washington, I got to make sure I'm loading up that defense with staff that's going to take care of those players and
Just make
um,
sure they stay.
yeah, I think because I do think a decent amount of them are going to leave, but
Mhm.
it'll be really interesting to see how he bounces back. I also noticed from Washington a couple of their pretty good DBs. I forget the
Yeah,
kid's name. I think he wears.
Mohammed, the guy who knocked the ball away against Texas, he
Yeah,
hit
yeah,
the
yeah.
portal. Will
I would
Rogers hit the portal, the
I
QB who
wouldn't
had
be
committed
surprised.
there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of those Washington players end up filling in the spots that the current Bama players leave, which
Maybe.
wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for DeBoer. He has chemistry with those guys and they've
Mhm.
worked together. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see where most of those guys end up because there's talks of oh, this guy's going to leave or this guy's going to stay. So we'll see. A lot of roster transformation will happen. They have 30 days to do it.
Yeah,
So
man, Caleb Downs transferring to Georgia with Malachi Starks in that back and 5-star KJ Bolden flipping there. That is scary hours on that back end. That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
But for more portal talk, we might as well. Oh, also before I move on, actually, if Harbaugh goes to the NFL, that opens another 30-day window for Michigan players. So watch for some talented guys there too. Should something go down there.
Yeah.
But just move on to a lot of portal talk as a whole. Or did you want to recap the playoffs first
I
before we
think we
got
can
into
just talk
that
about the
real quick?
portal now since we're kind of already on it. If you're cool with that.
Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, a lot of big players since the last time we've met have hit the portal. I'm just gonna rattle off a few. Just noting where they went. Quinshon Judkins, running back from Ole Miss, committing to Ohio State, and man, Ohio State is loading up. They have a lot of players coming back, and now they've gotten Will Howard and Judkins through the portal. Like I just said, Will Howard to OSU. DJ Lundy coming back from Colorado. I don't understand how that works because he had been committed there for like 3 weeks, but he's coming back. Jaden Mayava, the talented UNLV freshman, flipping from Georgia to USC. Now we're doing flipping and transfer portal. Lord knows how that works either. Malik Benson from Bama coming to FSU. FSU taking like 5-6 Bama players in right now. They've gotten a lot. Malachi Nelson, the 5-star to Boise State from USC. Ty Thompson, the 5-star from Oregon to Tulane. They get their quarterback of the future with Michael Pratt gone. Terrence Ferguson, the O-lineman from Bama. He was very talented. He's coming to FSU. KJ Jefferson, UCF gets their guy. Evan Stewart, a lot of people had their eyes on him. Probably the best skill position player to hit the portal. Just a few minutes ago, power back Roydell Williams from Bama goes to FSU. He had 5 touchdowns, about 600 yards on the year. And then FSU getting some other guys like defensive lineman Sion Lolo Mea. Can't even pronounce that, but comes from
Hey, you
Oregon
did a
State.
great.
And
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
yeah, I mean, and any guys with these Hawaiian last names on the defensive line, I'm automatically scared of them. So these are great pickups. FSU dominating the portal, but what has just been your outlook on the portal so far, Michael? Who have you looked at and been like, damn, they're loading up, or just some surprise commitments for you?
Yeah, so I think I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Ole Miss a little bit.
Mhm.
I think, especially on the D line, they have built up their defensive line immensely. Because we know, previously Ole Miss and Kiffin have no problems putting up points, but the
Right.
problem is their defense has always been a bit lackluster. That's resulted in them, obviously they have great seasons, but what separates them from the really elite superpower teams is their defense. Often can't stop some offense. So I think getting Walter Nolan from A&M is a huge
Huge.
pickup. I think he
Huge.
was like the top 5 overall player in the last class. He's going to be an instant impact player. They get Princely from Florida. who is a pretty efficient pass rusher coming
Yeah.
off the edge. So those are two guys. If you're talking about building up the trenches on the defense, those are instant impact additions. They also do lose a really good running back in Quinshon Judkins. We saw him,
That was such
not
a shock
necessarily,
to me, really.
yeah, not necessarily have the best season this past year. I think correct me if I'm wrong. The other running back there also played really well this
Yeah,
year, and
I
he
know
didn't
who
get as
you mean.
many touches as he was expecting. So
And they
yeah,
got one from South Carolina, Juice Wells. I don't know if he's a receiver or a running back or both, but
yeah,
he was.
yeah. So not super surprising there, but what is surprising is the way Lane Kiffin just treats it. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Kiffin just because he's trolled my Gators way too many times on Twitter, but I don't know. He loses Quinshon Judkins, who by all means is a stud running back. He'll probably be a top 5 running back just by pure talent next year, if I had
Yeah.
to guess. But and Kiffin's posting on a boat that he's fishing. Like it's if someone at Florida or Alabama or Georgia did that and they lost a huge commit or a huge player like that, it'd be kind of over. But he's able to get away with losing some good talent. But overall, Ole Miss has really added a lot. I think that they are, in my opinion, a very clear cut top 3 SEC program
Yeah,
at this
I
point.
agree.
But yeah, Ole Miss, and then I don't know. I don't think Evan Stewart going to Oregon gets talked about enough.
No, not at all. That's huge for them.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have Dylan Gabriel throwing the ball, who obviously has experience.
And then Dante Moore the next year, who's sitting on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have guys on guys to be able to throw him the ball, and that's probably a big reason why Evan Stewart went there. You obviously see Dan Lanning very quickly shutting down any rumors about going to
Yeah.
Bama. That team is going to be really good next year, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I think that's a huge addition. I was also kind of hoping Evan Stewart would come to Florida because we were in his top 3 previously, but it just
It
seems,
didn't seem like anybody else was even in the mix for him in the portal. I saw
yeah,
Texas and Bama got shut down immediately. FSU was thrown in there, but never heard anything with it. So it really seemed
yeah,
like it was just Oregon all the way.
yeah, yeah. And then I'm trying to think. I mean, I can speak quickly on my Gators. We've been pretty underwhelming. We've gotten a lot of key role guys that I think we needed for
64th
like
in the portal.
yeah,
64th the ranking
we
for
need
them.
there are specific positions of need that we've gotten and hidden on,
Yeah.
but like for example, our recruiting, or I guess we can call it recruiting of the portal
Right.
at receiver is just pretty god awful. CJ Daniels, the Liberty receiver, just committed to LSU over us, and he was favored to go to Texas, so that means we weren't even his number 2. Evan Stewart isn't coming here. Isaiah Bond is likely Texas bound. It just seems like,
Shinier Dyke is the one receiver I can see that you've gotten in the
yeah,
portal
and
from
maybe
Wisconsin.
he's performs better than people are giving him credit for. But is he a stud receiver like Stewart, like Bond, like CJ? I'm not
Like
sure.
Ricky Pearsall from last year. Is he even enough to replace that?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see, because we do have a lot of young, talented guys, but we don't have a ton of size out there. We have like Eugene Wilson, Trey Wilson is going to be a guy to look out for. He was like all freshman.
Does he have
He's
the
going to be a
size
stud,
though?
but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We have to get some more talent at receiver, but I'm trying to think of any other programs. LSU has definitely added some good players like
They
CJ
lost an
Daniels.
offensive tackle who's a 5-star. We're waiting to see where he goes to.
Yeah, yeah, and I know FSU has made some moves. I think it's interesting they're taking a lot of Bama's backups.
Yeah, it
Because
was
that's
weird.
always interesting because they're backups for a reason, but they're backups on Alabama. So
And some
like
of them are backups just because of the youth, and it's like they were
yeah,
just too young to play immediately, but they didn't want to wait. And now with coaching changes, it's even more of a reason. Because that's
yeah,
what went. Obviously I'm up to date with the FSU stuff. I pay attention. When they show the eligibility remaining on these guys, it's always 3 years, 3 years, 2 years, a couple of them in 4 years. So it seems like it's
yeah.
a lot of like impatient young guys who are just looking for their chance.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if Saban's giving the nod to join his team initially,
Yeah.
there has to be some potential there. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Any
I mean,
teams that
I
stand out
agree.
to you, or
Yeah, like you said, Ole Miss, of course, they stand out to me. Louisville really stands out to me too. They've been atop the transfer portal rankings on three basically from the beginning. They've just never left. They've added 22 players through the portal, and almost all of them are more talent when you do a side by side comparison. If you want to look at Colorado adding a lineman, sure, but I don't really think the transfer portal O-line build strategy is that efficient, in my
Hmm.
opinion. Just, slightly biased, but I think Florida State for the second straight year has kind of dominated the portal in terms of quality pickups versus who we're losing. Norvell flexing his muscles after what was a disappointing national or early signing day, losing a couple guys. He flexes his portal muscles, and he's brought in a lot of quality players. We saw it last year. This team was built out through the portal. Jared Verse, Jordan Travis, Keon Coleman, all these guys brought in through the portal at some point in their career. By Norvell, and he's done it again. He's rebuilt our trenches completely after a lot of them declared for the draft. We've totally rebuilt the line. Marvin Jones Jr. from Georgia on the other side of Patrick Payton, I think, is going to be an elite pass rush. The guy just said Lolo Hea, if that's how you pronounce it. If not, I'm sorry. Pairing him with the West Virginia talented freshman transfer who's coming over, that's clogging up the middle. And rebuilding the O-line with guys like Terrence Ferguson. So I love it. I've really loved what he's done in the portal. Not to mention, of course, getting us our quarterback for next year in DJU, who I was not, I'm not going to be over the moon about him. I was hoping for Cam Ward, but it's better than what we had on the bench and better than what was available. But those are my portal winners, and I already said some notable players, but not even, just to kind of keep it in the state of Florida a little bit, talking about, all of our teams, because obviously I'm FSU, you're UF, and Ryan's UF have just kind of slacked in the portal a little bit. Like I just said, UF at 64. Miami not much better. I believe they're also in like the late 50s, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I will
Somewhere
say,
in
I know
41.
it's
Sorry,
yeah, I know it says we're like 64, but I think the transfer rankings are
it's
like
more. It's just because who's leaving. It's because how
they're
many people leave.
actually like very, very terrible. Like
Yeah,
I think someone that just recently transferred to FSU was like a 90, and they've gotten like 0 snaps in like
maybe it
their
could be
whole
like it,
or
yeah,
like
because some of it takes into account eligibility remaining
yeah, it's
and stuff like
I'm
that.
not a
So yeah, I
huge fan
agree.
of the whole ranking system, but because I also think a big part of it is like fit into the program and the scheme.
Mm-hmm.
So like for example, like I probably have Florida a little bit higher than 64. I'm not going to be the person to tell you that we
No,
haven't been
yeah, no,
slacking
I
in the
get it.
portal because we have, but like
And some
some
of
of the
the
key
losses are quality losses too. Like you don't mind those people leaving.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's like yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the rankings, but I definitely will agree that like we've been kind of lackluster in the portal. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think that kind of sums up some of our portal updates. If you want to kind of shift
I do.
gears,
Yeah, there is one more thing I want to say. Just I would really hate it if I did not take this opportunity to kind of dump on Miami and kick them while they were down because they wanted to flex this great recruiting class and Mario Cristobal's prowess just for them to not get any quarterback that they talked to. I mean, they talked to so many. Cam Ward, KJ, Malachi Nelson, and every quarterback you name them, they talked to him. They got zero. They showed how much they don't trust this kid. Probably took a dump on his confidence. The guy who played Emory Williams. Talked to every quarterback, got nothing. They thought they're gonna flip Jeremiah, and they got nothing. FSU did too, but we don't speak about that. And now you look at the state of Florida after UCF just got KJ Jefferson, brought in their best recruiting class they've ever had, and a good portal class. All of a sudden, in my eyes, Miami's the fourth best team in Florida. That's just me though. And I would love just the opportunity to kick them while they're down and just say how they have whiffed in the portal and whiffed just on picking up some of these key players. But yeah, if there's anything you want to add in kicking Miami while they're down, go ahead before we move
yeah,
on
no,
to
I
our
mean,
rankings.
I think you hit it right on the head. I have a few friends who are Miami fans, and I don't think they can even convince themselves that they're happy with that quarterback room right now. You think you're going to get Cam Ward, that doesn't work out. You have a couple other options. You talked to a bunch of guys, and you end up with someone who I think has potential, but it's not really the
Is that
standard.
who's gonna put you in the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's kind of embarrassing if you're Cristobal.
And look at the
You know,
schools that beat them out for quarterbacks. I mean, Boise State beat you for a quarterback. UCF beat you for a quarterback. I
yeah,
mean, Ohio State is
and
no shame, but still, they beat you.
as cliche as it sounds too, like it's not like quarterback is like an unimportant position. It's probably one of the
Mm.
most important positions on the field. Like the quarterback is supposed to be the leader of the offense, right? So it's a pretty big loss for Miami, but I don't know. I've said since Cristobal was hired, this guy is going to be able to acquire talent, and I think that has been true for the most part. But
Especially in high school
his
recruiting, yeah.
on field results are just so always so underwhelming. There's a reason why his overall record as a head coach like all time is like right around 500. I think he's a very mediocre coach on game day.
Yeah.
He'll be able to bring in guys with whatever recruiting tactics he's using, but I don't know, man. If you have all that talent and you can't even get a really even decent quarterback from the portal, I'm not really sure what you're doing.
Yeah, I
I'd
mean,
hate to see.
100.
I don't know, and that's good for me because we play them week 1 next year. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
With that
so I
being said,
mean,
you
yeah,
kind of want to go to some
yeah,
recap.
we can move to a quick recap before our rankings. Just had to kick them a little bit because nobody really likes Miami, but yeah. So obviously we meet again after we talked before the semifinals originally, and the way everything played out. I mean, I don't think we were too surprised by Michigan becoming a national champion. Obviously, they came in as probably the best team in the dance. But really, it was just how spot on our analysis, especially for the Washington Texas game, was. But even in Michigan Bama, what were just kind of your thoughts on the playoff as a whole? What were your main takeaways?
Yeah, I think there's the case for this to be one of the best playoffs we've ever had, if not the best.
Probably
Those
the
two,
first round. I don't know about the championship game though.
yeah, the championship game was kind of a letdown a tiny bit. I mean, it got close and
For a
entertaining in
little
the
bit,
third
yeah.
and fourth quarter a bit, which I'll give it credit to. Washington, didn't go away really, but I mean, those two semifinal games, there is no other
Hmm.
playoff that had a better combination of semifinal games.
Yeah.
Both of those games were instant classics, pardon me. They kind of played out kind of exactly how we thought they would, and how a lot of people, admittedly, probably thought they would. Right?
Yeah.
Michigan and Bama, a lot stronger in the trenches, ground and pound game.
Saban
Not a
just got
lot.
outcoached, in my opinion. I think
Yeah,
Harbaugh just outdid him. And in that one game, I'm not saying forever, but in that one game, I think Harbaugh just had the better scheme, had the better plan, and maybe had the better players.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think that game was great. It could have really gone either way. I really thought Bama left a lot of points
Hmm.
on the board that they just didn't cash in on. Um, if you would have probably told me, well, I don't know. I was gonna say I really think they should have won that game. There were so
Yeah.
many opportunities they had, but Michigan just didn't go away. They were really able to take what Bama was giving them at ease, really, at certain points of the game. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting game. And then Washington, Texas, we saw some pretty solid performances from the two started quarterbacks. Penix masterclass, really
100%. Yeah.
just crazy performance. And it's not like we weren't at least a little bit expecting some of that stardom, right? Like he's done this time and time again against teams that are maybe favored or have a little bit of a talent advantage, but he really showed out, and you have to give all the credit to Kalen Deboer for beating that Texas team. It's a big reason probably why he's at Alabama now. If he gets blown out in that game, there's no way he's at coach of Bama right now.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then national championship, I thought Michigan had the advantage in the trenches. I thought it would take a really, really, probably maybe even a better performance from Penix than in the semifinal for them to have a
I
good
didn't. I
shot at
didn't think
winning
the
this game.
trenches was on both sides though. I really only thought it was on the defensive side for Michigan. I thought, or sorry, the offensive side. I thought Washington's O line honestly held up pretty well, all things considered. Like I didn't think they just fell apart to Michigan. Like I thought they
Yeah,
looked a little better
the
than they
thing is,
could
I
have.
don't. The way I kind of was when I was watching the game was like, yeah, the O line is like holding up, but it's like, in my opinion, it was kind of like by a thread at a lot of times where
Yeah, I can see that.
Penix wasn't fully able to go through all of his progressions. He wasn't fully able to maybe set his feet or be as comfortable. And I mean, you saw that, right? He was taking a beating at certain points. Ribs were, obviously injured. And I think there was one play I remember specifically where he like avoided a tackle or something, or like he was scared of someone like coming at him at some point. It was very visible that he was like scared of the Michigan D line, and I think that's more of a mental thing than anything. And that has a huge effect on the game.
Hmm.
Have to give credit to Michigan. I thought they were going to run away with the game when I saw Donovan Edwards 40-yard touchdown run, 40-yard touchdown run like that. Also give credit to Washington for not going away after that. Yeah, overall pretty entertaining. Obviously, the semifinals were more entertaining in my mind, but
Yeah.
yeah, this year didn't disappoint in the postseason.
No, not at all. I think overall, just at the end of the day, Michigan just, for better or worse, just was the best team in college football this year, in my opinion. I think they
Yeah,
they proved it every chance they had to. Whether I like it or not, because I'm obviously not a big Michigan fan. I gotta admit, I think they were just overall the best team. I don't really want to hear the Georgia argument because if you're a Georgia guy and you're arguing that, then you should have beat Bama when you had the chance because Bama ran all over you and Michigan held them up pretty solid. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
I mean,
mean,
I think the best team
imagine if
won.
this Michigan team had, well, I don't know. I'm not the biggest JJ McCarthy fan,
Me
but
neither. Me
imagine
neither.
they had a quarterback like Quinn or Michael Penix, and they had some of their receivers. Like
Yeah, no, it would have been
that'd be
over. It would have been
yeah, it'd be a scary, scary sight. And they did it in a very almost one-dimensional way for the most part. I thought at least, but yeah,
yeah. There's
I have
no
to give them
argument.
credit, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. And speaking of next year,
Yep.
it's
Let's
never
get
too
on.
early for some speculation on who the good and bad teams will be next year. So we're gonna give our top 12, maybe some sleepers or contenders for the new 12 team playoff format.
I'm so
Before we do
excited.
that, actually, I promised Rohan that I give him a shout out. He said that the Washington Huskies would beat Texas, and he was right again. So kind of a bit of a throwback to the TCU Roll Jesus days. But yeah, he says he's 2 of 2 for picking underdogs in the semifinal game, which is honestly a pretty specific thing to be good at. But I
Yeah.
have to give him credit where credit's due, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. Rohan, back-to-back years of getting, a sleeper pick right in the playoffs. But I don't know. I mean, I think we're both super excited for this 12-team playoff. It's what we've all been hoping for. I can only imagine if we had it this year, how much better it would have been. But it's finally here. We're finally expanding. So, of course, just to clear everything up with you guys who don't know, in this new setup, it is automatic bids for the conference winners. I guess now it's Power 4, which almost works out because when you have 12 teams, having the 4 best get a bye is better. But so um the 4 conference winners are auto 1 through 4. Doesn't matter what the record is. If you win your conference, you're automatically 1 through 4. I guess the committee will rank them once they get 1 through 4. But
Yeah,
those are it. And
but
then
the big benefit is if you win your conference and you're one of those
so
big
it
four.
solves the issue of conference strength.
Yeah,
Really.
because it's SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC. If you win any of those, you get a bye in the first round, which is huge.
Yeah. I like that. I really like that. And then the best group of 5 winner, I don't think they get the 5 seed. I'm pretty sure they're just thrown in there wherever the committee sees fit. But they're in there, which is huge, giving the group of 5 team a shot because we've seen teams like Cincinnati and 2017 UCF were a group of 5 thought they deserved their shot. Now they get it. And then the other 7 teams are just committee selection.
Yeah, I actually have a bit of an opposition to the auto bid for a group of 5. I think it should just, yeah, I think, if there already is a group of 5 team that's good enough to make it, they'd be in regardless, right? Like, why do they have to have
I don't know though.
an auto
I don't
bid?
know
Like,
because we got to look at the team like Cincinnati when they got snubbed the first time around. We
they would
thought
have
they were
made
going
it,
to make it,
but they
but
would have made it in the top 12 if they were
yeah,
snubbed, and you know what I mean? So if it's a
yeah,
top 12 team, they can earn it without getting the auto bid, because I promise you there will be years where there isn't a top 12 group of 5 team and they get an auto
yeah.
bid and then they get killed by, the number 5 seed, for example, in the first
But
round,
you know
right?
what?
So
When you got 12 teams, if one of them is a killing, I don't think it matters that much, really.
but why have
I
one
think they
be a
get the
killing when you can
opportunity.
have, however many, like 4 amazing games in the first round instead of just,
Yeah.
why have 3
But at the
amazing games in
same
the first
time,
round?
as there are years where they get killed, I think there will also be years where they pull off the upset. So, just giving them the chance. I think
Yeah,
it's a good
I don't
move by
know.
the committee.
I think they can
It
earn the
depends.
chance outside of that, but I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, but
I
yeah.
don't
With
think
that
it's
being
anything
said,
to lose sleep over at the end of the day.
yeah, I don't know. With that being said, do you want to kind of get to your way too
Yeah,
early
so
top 12?
I'll run through my 12 because I think this is going to be a really interesting year. Whether it's Bama with Saban retiring and potentially John Harbaugh leaving, or Jim Harbaugh, sorry, with Harbaugh leaving from Michigan, possibly to go to the NFL. I think this is going to be a really interesting year. I'm going to go in order. I just wrote down 1 through 12 how I think they're going to be seeded. Georgia, I think, is going to win the SEC. I feel like we're both in agreement there, right? They should be the favorites. Let them have it. With Bama gone, or gone for now, I think Georgia's just clear cut to take the SEC. Ohio State, I think, is going to take the Big Ten. They have just loaded up. Emeka Egbuka said he's returning. Travion Henderson's returning. A lot of the defense is coming back. They're good to go. I think Florida State claims the 3 seed by winning the ACC. I think, it'll come down to record when we look at 1 through 4, like where they're ranked. But I'm just, for now, Florida State wins the ACC is the number 3. And I think Utah wins the Big 12. I think it's really interesting because I think Utah and Arizona are 2 of the big dogs coming over from the Pac-12 who can compete. KJ to UCF, I love that move. I think they're going to be a sneaky contender. to steal the Big 12. Oklahoma State, as always, should be in there, and then there's other teams. But those are my 4 conference winners, right? I think Oregon takes the 5. They're loaded. I think they just narrowly lose the Big 10 championship game. They claim the 5. Ole Miss at 6. I think Bama drops off a bit, but I still will put them at 7 just out of respect for the talent and the program that has been built. And, Deboer is he's no bum. He's not a bum coach, So I have Bama at 7. Missouri at 8. They bring back all their key components except the running back Schrader. They've done good in the portal, good in recruiting. Missouri at 8. Clemson at 9. I think this is the bounce back year. Your back's against the wall. If they fall on their face here, I think as a program they might be cooked just for a little bit. I think Dabo becomes hot seat talks if they just fall on their face again this year. So I think Clemson lives up to the pressure. They're at 9. Michigan drops all the way to 10, and I was thinking about just kicking them off the list completely. But if Harbaugh stays, which is a possibility, I'll say they grabbed at 10. My group of 5 team is going to be Tulane. I think with Ty Thompson at quarterback and a new coach, who I have a bit of faith in. I like him. And a good portal class and everything. I think Tulane has been ranked for a few years now. I think they're going to continue to be good, and they get the group of 5 bid. And then Notre Dame slips in at the 12. Those are my 12 teams. After you give me your 12, we can work through who we think is going to be the champ and whatnot. But those are my 12. What are yours, and what do you think of my list?
Yeah, I have pretty similar conference champs, and an overall pretty similar list. So I guess we'll start with the SEC. I think Georgia takes the crown. They have a pretty difficult schedule. They go to Texas. I think they also play
they have Clemson, or I'm
yeah,
not sure.
They play Alabama as well, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they play Georgia, they play Bama, they play Clemson, they play Texas. I still think that they win at least 2 out of those 3 games. I think Georgia wins the SEC, and if they don't, they're definitely going to be in the playoff. Ohio State, I also agree with what you're saying. Winning the Big Ten. I think that getting Will Howard is huge. I think there's also kind of a do or die season for Ryan Day.
In terms of beating Michigan.
Yeah, it's that, but it's also taking the program to the next level. Like, when's the last time? I don't know. It's just been a while since they've been.
Technically, last year they were really only a field goal away from winning the national championship. Technically, so
I don't know. Yeah. I guess that's true. I don't know. It's still there's somehow still feels like there's a ton of pressure on Ryan Day to get them to the top. Arizona, I think, is my pick to win the Big 12. Also, this is in no particular order. I think what Jedd Fish has done with that program is unbelievable. I think
it
was 2 years.
He's been a great coach.
Yeah, 2 seasons ago, they had open tryouts for like walk-ons in the middle of the season, which is insane to think about. That's how bad they were 2 seasons ago. Then I think they went like 7-5 last year or something like that. And then this year, obviously, a huge
year. They finished
11
or 10. They were pretty close to the top 10 when the final AP poll came out.
Some amazing progress there. I think they come out on top of the Big 12. And then I think Clemson wins the ACC. I also think this is kind of a do or die year for Dabo. I think the big reason here, for me at least, is not only that it's a big season for Dabo, but I think they do have probably the most talent in the ACC at the end of the year. It's close, but I think that.
Do you think Cade can get the job done though? Because now it's 2 years in of all this ridiculous hype, and it feels like it's starting to not be a quarterback problem, but it might be a coaching one. Do you feel like Cade is enough with the limited receiver weapons they have to overpower FSU?
I don't know. I think it's close. I think that the attrition FSU is going through, and obviously, like we just talked about for a good amount of time, they're bringing in some new guys from the portal. It's not like they're losing everyone, but I do think FSU takes a step down from a talent perspective this year.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at all the guys they're losing on both sides of the ball, just because of their age and their eligibility, it's not going to be easy to replace all of that in 1 year. Now, do I think FSU falls off the face of the earth? Obviously not, but I barely have FSU missing making the playoff, actually.
Yeah.
I think they're right on the cusp. I think it could go either way for them next year. I also think that they have, well, I was talking to you about this right before we started recording. Yeah. I think they have a pretty difficult schedule. They play a lot of teams that are going to come to play week in and week out. Georgia Tech has gotten pretty good. Memphis is never a team you want to play. SMU is great. They also play Clemson, North Carolina. Florida is a huge rival. And I'm sure I'm missing others, but they don't play an easy schedule next year. and it's not going to be easy. So it could really go either way. That could also be what they need,
I'm gonna
though,
hold
right?
you to this. If it comes to an argument between FSU and some other teams, and we want to bring up schedule, I'm gonna bring this clip back when we want to talk about their strength of schedule.
Well, I'm 100% doubling down on it. I mean, at least right now, it looks like they
Yeah,
have a pretty,
preseason wise, yeah,
yeah. It looks like they have a not the easiest schedule, and I think that's kind of maybe even like a slept-on schedule in terms of difficulty because
it could be.
on paper these teams like the Memphises and SMU's and
Right. It's gonna be how do they play when it comes time to
exactly,
that.
yeah. So, well, I mean, that's kind of to be seen. So I think FSU just barely, misses out on making the playoff for me. I also think this is kind of a bold prediction because I just had them being my national championship champion this past year. I think Bama misses out on making the playoff this year as well. If you look at their schedule, it's very tough. I think they could have 4 or more losses, especially when you consider not only the staff changes and getting rid of Saban and trying to replace him with Kevin Deboer, but also the attrition they're going to kind of experience on the back end. We just talked about potentially them losing Caleb Downs. They're losing a lot of depth, probably in other positions as well. So that's never easy to kind of recover from. And yeah, I think they could have a decent amount of losses. They play Georgia, which I think is a loss. At Tennessee is never easy. At LSU is never easy. At Oklahoma won't be easy. Auburn is a rivalry game that Auburn always seems to make closer than it should be. There are a lot of difficult games that that Bama's going to have to win, and I think it's very possible they end the season with 3 or 4 losses, and I don't know if that's enough to really make the playoff in this day and age. But yeah, from the SEC, I think 4 teams make it. I already talked about Georgia. I think it'll be Texas right there behind them. They have obviously a ton of talent. Quinn comes back. That's huge. They do lose some talent at receiver in Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy leaving. But I think they'll be fine. Their defense, I think, has to improve, especially in their secondary. But I think they get better there next year. I also have Ole Miss making the playoff out of the SEC. We've talked about all the talent they've acquired. I think the key here is that their defense is going to get better this year. You still have Jackson Dart there, which is a very consistent performer. And I think that when you return a quarterback that has decent production, that goes a really long way. And that's another big reason why I think Georgia returns Carson Beck, Texas returns Quinn Ewers, Ole Miss returns Jackson Dart, and you're going to be surprised here, but I think Florida might sneak in as maybe something like the 12 seed at the end of the playoff. They've returned Graham Mertz, who is quietly one of the more productive quarterbacks.
What are we doing?
One of the more productive quarterbacks in the SEC. If you look at their schedule, and the only reason I'm saying this is because if you really look at their schedule, it is very bottom heavy in terms of. I think that this Florida team has a genuine shot at starting 6-1, if not 7-0. And I think that if you let a team led by Billy Napier get hot, we've seen it before. Graham Mertz and the rest of those guys have some chemistry. They could screw around and end with 2 losses at the end of the year, which could just be enough for them to make it. And if you really think about it, it sounds kind of ridiculous to say this team's going to win 10 games or 9 games. And I'm not saying that's the most probable thing. All right, I'm not going to lie. This is a semi-biased take to say they're going to make it. But to say that they're only going to win 5 games this year is kind of blasphemy. I've heard that from fans all over social media.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, but I mean, this is arguably one of the most difficult schedules any team has ever experienced, ever. And so if they start 6-1 or 7-0, especially if they start 7-0, which could happen, all they would need to do is lose to Georgia and then lose to one of Ole Miss or LSU. I think FSU is a winnable game. I think.
Yeah, looking at the schedule, I feel like there's max 8 winnable games.
Yeah, we play Texas as well. So I don't know. I think a 9-3 Florida team that loses to Georgia, Texas, and Ole Miss, who we already have said are the other 3.
You think it'll be LSU?
I mean, they lose Jaden Daniels, they lose Malik Neighbors. It's also a home game next year, and you can never.
But between at Tennessee and home versus LSU, you think both of those can go your way?
I mean, Tennessee, we've kind of had the better.
I can agree with that, and that's not to mention losing a game that you probably shouldn't lose, like we've seen the last couple of years.
That obviously assumes that we win versus teams that we should be winning against. But I don't know. You honestly have to ask yourself though, with this amount of strength of schedule, if the only losses Florida has at the end of the season are Georgia, Texas, and Ole Miss, who we think are the 3 favorites.
I agree. If they only lose 3, then I can agree with you.
And if those are the 3, and we agree that those are the 3 out of the SEC that are the most likely to make it, then I think that they have a decent,
Oh, I
argument.
forgot to put Texas in my playoff thing. I totally whiffed. So scratch what I said about some of the other teams. I totally forgot about Texas.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
should be in there.
So, I mean, if those are the three SEC teams that end up making it or are the favorites, and those are their only three losses, I think they have a fair argument to make it, especially if those games are close. If they're getting blown out by these
Yeah.
teams, then why put them in there? But I don't know. I think Florida is a definite sleeper because also, if you really think about it, this is a do or die year for Billy Napier. He has to make a bowl game. If he doesn't, he might be out of a job. But we've also
Yeah.
made significant staffing changes.
Mhm.
We hired a co-defensive coordinator. We hired an assistant AD for football operations. These are off the field kind of changes that have been made that people aren't really talking about. We're really restructuring the program kind of to be more of like an NFL team, and I think that's it really is important at the end of the day. In the Big Ten, I have obviously Ohio State, like we already talked about. Right behind them, Oregon. I think I'm in a very similar boat, and then I do think
Yep.
Michigan wins again. I think they do fall off a little bit after this year. They lose J.J. McCarthy. They lose some of these running backs that are studded, but they still have talent on defense. And I do think one thing that might have an effect on them performance-wise that people aren't talking about is these rumors of Jim Harbaugh, going to the NFL. They haven't really been shut down by Harbaugh
And
just
he's
yet.
taking interviews with teams. I just saw a report a little while ago that he's taking interviews.
And if there's exactly, it's that, and it's also if there's someone who knows about the impact that NFL whispers can have on the culture of a program, it's me. Dan Mullen, he had whispers of going to the NFL, and that completely destroyed his last
Yeah.
season there and got him fired. So I think that goes a long way. I think they still sneak into the playoffs, but I think they take a step down from winning the national championship this year. Like I said before, from the Big 12, I have Arizona making it. Right behind them, Utah. I do think KJ Jefferson going to UCF is a huge addition,
I think they could
especially.
be a sneaky contender in the Big 12.
And you know what? The thing is, they have Gus Malzahn, who has experience coaching in on the big
Cam
stage,
Newton.
right?
And that's who
He
KJ Jefferson is comp to is Cam Newton.
yeah,
Whether it's
and
legit or not, I don't know. But
so I don't know. They're definitely a team to keep an eye out on. But I think that out of the Big 12, I give Arizona and Utah the best two chances.
with a
And then
relatively
the
easy
ACC,
schedule too, real quick.
yeah,
Just one.
ACC, like I said before, Clemson with FSU barely missing it. And the last two teams I have are Notre Dame, as a non-conference,
Yep.
and then Tulane or Memphis. I think either of these teams have a great shot of winning or coming out on top of the group of five. So that's kind of how I see it. Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Florida out of the SEC, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan out of the Big Ten, Arizona and Utah take it from the Big 12, Clemson from the ACC, Notre Dame, and then one of either Tulane or Memphis.
Yeah.
I think it should be pretty interesting. That's in no order,
I
by the
agree.
way, but
Yeah.
pretty similar to yours, I think.
Yeah, I think, and then we don't have to discuss a lot of sleepers now because we just have so much more time before the season starts. But I think it's gonna be great. I'm really excited for this 12 team. I think there's gonna be a lot of finally some parity. Not just a playoff full of 2 or 3 SEC teams and a Big Ten team. I think it's gonna be great to see. Just any upsets. I mean, you got to think an upset's coming soon, and it's gonna be great. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
We'll have so much more college football to talk about as time goes on when we do our state of Florida, kind of prediction for the year like we did last year. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you just want to add before we wrap this up? It's been a great episode. Obviously, we ran so long because just so much to talk about.
Yeah. I am kind of worried about the 12-team format for a couple of reasons. I think one, the rest of the bowl games, if you thought they were meaningless before, they really don't have much meaning now. I think they're going to have to find some solutions to that, whether it be financial incentives. I mean, the injury risk is just huge, especially for these big players. They're the players we want to see play, and they have every right to opt out because,
of course.
the end season goal is to make the championship. And if you're not even one of the 12 final teams, you'd much rather just be safe and take your talents to the NFL. But I think the second main reason is I think we could see the same few teams end up making it to the big stages in the semifinals year in and year out. Because think about
we see that now, though. What's the
not
difference?
really. I mean, Georgia lost to Bama in the SEC championship game, and they were penalized
and then
for
Bama made it, who
by
we've
not
seen
making
every
it.
other year. So
I mean, well, this year, if that was the case, Georgia would still be in it, and they could very well have three-peated if they were in, right? I think we can all agree they had the talent to do that, and it's just going to be scary. I'm afraid we're going to see just the most talented teams come to the forefront because there really is no punishment to losing, big games. You lose one big game during the BCS era, you're out, right? But if you lose, you can lose 2 now and still have a chance at making the playoff. And once you're in, you never really know what's going to happen. So
All right,
I don't
I
know.
think that's an aspect that's great though. Is once you're in, just make it in and let's see what happens. Yeah, I mean maybe 12 is too much. Honestly, you can make that argument, but I think 4 was too little at the end of the day. I think you either needed 6 or you needed 8, and you call it a day. I thought 4 was too little. 12 could be too much, but I'm not gonna knock it until I see it, and I just see.
I don't know. I'm
I
kind of an
want to
old.
watch it.
I'm kind of an old head. I really do like the just the BCS era, old school. Because then bowl
Yeah,
games still mean something then, right? So I don't know. It'll be
I don't
it'll
really care
definitely
for
be
bowl games
interesting.
regardless.
It'll be interesting to see, but I'm excited for it. I am excited. It's change, and I think
Yeah,
any change is interesting. So we'll see how it plays
it's
out.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Michael. As always, it's been a great episode. We'll have
Of
so much
course.
more college football to talk about, and it's awesome that it's such a year-round sport. Until next time, guys, remember, like, subscribe, comment what you want to see more of. Thank you so much for the support, the continued support, and I promise we'll get much more good content to you on the way, like I just said in our other video that I just put out the other day. So, yeah, as usual, thank you for the support. Until next time.
Thank you guys. Peace out.